The space station hung in orbit like a giant jewel, its lights reflecting against the endless black of space. For Captain Marcus Hale, the hum of engines and the constant chatter of alien languages were normal, almost comforting. He had spent most of his life among humans and aliens, traveling through the galaxy as part of the United Earth Diplomatic Corps. He was used to strange customs, dangerous encounters, and the occasional awkward situation. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for the request he was about to hear. It started with a summons from the Council of the Lyathar, a species known throughout several star systems for their intelligence and political cunning. Marcus had dealt with Lyathar diplomats before, and he knew they were proud, calculating, and rarely made mistakes. The summons was delivered by a young aide who bowed deeply before him. "Captain Hale, you are requested in the private chamber of Lady Thalira," the aide said, his voice trembling slightly, as if even he feared the alien noblewoman. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Lady Thalira was one of the most powerful figures in the Lyathar Empire, a society that ruled countless planets through politics, wealth, and carefully maintained fear. Humans were considered insignificant by most Lyathar nobles, amusing for their curiosity but ultimately unimportant. Marcus was intrigued, but he also felt a flicker of unease. Private chambers meant secrets, and secrets often meant danger. When he arrived, the doors opened silently, revealing a woman unlike any human he had ever met. Lady Thalira's skin shimmered faintly in the light, a silver tone that seemed to glow from within. Her eyes were large and deep, colored like molten gold, and they studied him with an intensity that made him feel as if she could read every thought in his mind. She wore a ceremonial robe that gleamed with jewels, each one pulsing softly with energy. It was clear she was not just a noble, she was royalty in the purest sense. "Captain Hale," she said, her voice smooth and musical yet commanding. "Thank you for coming," Marcus inclined his head. "Lady Thalira," he said, trying to mask his nervousness, though he had no idea why he felt uneasy. "You requested me." Marcus couldn't stop himself from studying them, but he forced his eyes back to her. "I have a proposition for you," she said. She paused, as if testing whether the words would shock him. "I want you to be my husband, just for tonight." "You want me as your husband?" He had read about Lyathar rituals, and he knew that the choice of a mate was not simply personal. It was political, strategic, and dangerous. To refuse could insult her and her house. To accept could humiliate humanity, or worse, put him in mortal danger. "Why me?" he asked finally. His voice sounded weaker than he wanted. "Because you are human," she said simply, "and humans are underestimated. They survive, they endure, they adapt. Tonight, I need someone who will not crumble under scrutiny, someone who will understand subtlety and strategy, even without our experience." He had spent his career as an observer, a negotiator of minor disputes, a voice of reason among humans and aliens alike. Now he was being asked to step into a role that was ceremonial, dangerous, and utterly alien. I don't know if I can do that," he admitted. "You can," she said, her gaze steady. "Humans are stronger than they believe. You will follow my instructions. You will speak when needed, remain silent when necessary, and you will not falter. That is all I ask." Accepting the role could change everything, for her, for him, and for humanity standing among the stars. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of preparation. Lady Thalira explained the ceremony, the rules, and the dangers. Marcus was to appear as her husband in the grand hall, to maintain composure under scrutiny, and to support her publicly. There would be no personal obligations. This was purely ceremonial, yet he felt the weight of expectation pressing down on him. The eyes of an entire political system would watch him tonight. Every gesture, every word, every reaction could be used against them both. He spent hours studying the ceremonial protocols, memorizing every custom, and asking questions to ensure he understood. Lady Thalira answered patiently, but Marcus could sense an unspoken tension beneath her calm exterior. She trusted him to act correctly, but trust in the Lyathar world was fragile. Any misstep could lead to political ruin or death. As evening approached, the space station transformed. The halls glowed with light, alien dignitaries arrived, and the air buzzed with expectation. Marcus stood in the waiting chamber, dressed in formal attire provided by Lady Thalira's attendants. The outfit was unfamiliar, elegant, and entirely alien. He caught a glimpse of himself in a mirror and barely recognized the human standing there. He looked different. Tonight, he was not just a man. He was a symbol, a human representative of his species, stepping into a galaxy that had often dismissed humans as weak or irrelevant. A gentle knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Lady Thalira entered, her robe flowing behind her, her presence commanding the room. She offered him a small smile. "Are you ready?" she asked. "As ready as I can be," he replied, though his voice betrayed his nerves. "Good," she said. "Remember, tonight is not about power or love. It is about presence, observation, and subtle influence. You will see much, learn much, and you may surprise yourself." This was the unknown at its most personal and political form, and somehow he trusted that whatever happened tonight, humanity had a chance to be seen differently. The doors opened and they stepped into the ceremonial hall together. It was a breathtaking space, unlike anything Marcus had ever imagined. Towers of crystal reflected light across the room. Holographic symbols floated in the air. Hundreds of dignitaries from dozens of species had gathered, all watching, all waiting. Conversations hushed as the duo entered. The tension was palpable. Every eye in the room studied him, the human, chosen to represent a species rarely taken seriously. Lady Thalira led him to the center of the hall, and he followed, keeping his movements precise. He felt the weight of expectation like gravity, pulling him forward, demanding he succeed. When they reached the ceremonial platform, she stood beside him and gestured gracefully for him to take his place. Marcus obeyed, feeling both fear and an odd sense of pride. This was his moment, humanity's moment. As the ceremony began, he observed closely. The Lyathar rituals were complex, full of symbolism and subtle threats disguised as courtesies. Dignitaries whispered among themselves, some sneering at his presence, some curious, some confused. Marcus realized that being human was both a weakness and a strength. While others relied on power, influence, or fear, humans endured, observed, and adapted. His role was to be patient, attentive, and unshakable. Hours passed. The ceremony progressed, testing his composure at every turn. Lady Thalira remained calm beside him, occasionally giving him a small nod, a gesture that told him he was performing well. Marcus noticed how other dignitaries underestimated him, assuming humans lacked sophistication. That assumption, he realized, was their greatest mistake. By the time the ceremony ended, Marcus felt drained but oddly exhilarated. He had navigated every challenge, every question, every whisper of suspicion without faltering. More importantly, he had observed and learned. He understood more about alien politics, strategies, and social dynamics than any human before him. Tonight had been dangerous, but it had also been an awakening. When the ceremony concluded, Lady Thalira led him back to her private chamber. She offered him a rare smile. "You did well," she said. "Few humans would have managed this. Fewer still would have observed and understood as you did. Remember, tonight was not about love. It was about seeing clearly. And you have seen." Tonight, he had shown that humans could endure, observe, and navigate challenges that others could not. As he prepared to leave, he glanced at Lady Thalira. She had chosen him not for power, charm, or loyalty, but for his strength, patience, and understanding. And in choosing him, she had made a statement that would ripple across the stars, though few realized it yet. Humanity had a place in the galaxy, and for the first time he felt its weight and its potential. The doors of the chamber closed behind him, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts. He knew this night was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and unpredictable, but for the first time he felt that humans were no longer invisible. They were seen, and more importantly, they were respected, quietly, subtly, and perhaps just enough to change everything. After the ceremony, the space station seemed quieter, but Marcus Hale could feel tension vibrating through every corridor. What he had done tonight was more than survive a Lyathar ritual. It was an act that no human before him had ever performed. He had represented his species in front of a galaxy that often dismissed humans as insignificant. And yet, the reactions he saw in the corridors, in whispers behind closed doors, made him realize that his presence had caused ripples far larger than he had expected. Lady Thalira had not summoned him immediately after the ceremony, leaving him to walk among the alien dignitaries on his own. Many glanced at him with surprise, some with curiosity, and a few with outright disdain. Marcus noticed the way some Lyathar nobles whispered to each other, their eyes flicking toward him as though questioning his audacity. Humans were not meant to appear in such halls, and yet here he was, calm and composed, standing beside one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. He walked slowly, absorbing everything. The station was enormous, and its corridors twisted and stretched like a living organism. Alien species of all shapes and sizes passed him, each with their own agendas, hierarchies, and opinions. Many treated him like a curiosity, a fragile human caught in the midst of a political storm. Others were intrigued, their eyes reflecting the realization that perhaps humans were not as fragile as they had thought. Marcus could feel it. Tonight, he had changed the perception of his species, at least in subtle ways. Hours later, he returned to Lady Thalira's private chamber. She was waiting, seated on a platform that elevated her slightly above the room, giving her an even greater air of authority. She smiled faintly when he entered. "You performed well tonight," she said, her voice calm but layered with meaning. "Many of my rivals expected me to falter or for you to fail. Neither happened. I listened, I observed, and I followed your instructions." He felt a quiet pride, though he did not allow it to show too strongly. Pride, he had learned, could be dangerous in the presence of powerful beings. "Humans have a unique way of seeing the world," she said, leaning forward slightly. "You think in ways that others do not. That is why I chose you." The next morning, Marcus returned to his quarters to review the events of the previous night. He documented everything he had observed, the interactions, the subtle power plays, the alliances forming and breaking before his eyes. He also noted the reactions of the dignitaries who had attended. Some were cautious, as if waiting for a sign of weakness. Others seemed genuinely surprised, perhaps even impressed, that a human could maintain composure in such a complex alien environment. As he reviewed his notes, a message arrived from Lady Thalira. It was brief, but the tone was firm. She requested his presence in the observation hall immediately. Marcus felt a flutter of tension in his chest. The observation hall was where the Liathar monitored activity across the station, as well as incoming communications from distant planets and political centers. Being summoned there indicated that she wanted to discuss matters of importance, likely matters with consequences far beyond the station itself. When he arrived, Lady Thalira stood by a large, holographic display showing planetary systems, trade routes, and diplomatic communications. Marcus could see that the activity was intense, far more than he had ever imagined. "Sit," she commanded softly, and he obeyed. "Captain," she began, her gaze fixed on the display, "choosing a human as my ceremonial partner has caused a stir. Many of my rivals are testing boundaries. They are not pleased. Some see it as a weakness, others as a provocation. Either way, we must act carefully. You must also show that humans are patient, adaptable, and capable of thinking in ways others cannot." One delegation of tall, insect-like beings attempted to provoke him, claiming that humans could never survive serious political maneuvering. Marcus responded calmly, deflecting their jabs with polite words and carefully phrased observations. Their smug expressions faltered, and he realized that subtlety and patience were more powerful than confrontation. At the same time, Marcus observed Lady Thalira in action. She was extraordinary, calm, commanding, and always several steps ahead. He noticed that her rivals underestimated him in ways that gave him a unique advantage. Where others saw humans as weak, she had chosen someone who could endure scrutiny and survive challenges with minimal visible effort. Marcus began to understand the brilliance of her strategy. By choosing a human, she had demonstrated that her house was unpredictable, bold, and willing to challenge the established hierarchy. One evening, as the station's artificial suns dimmed to simulate night, Marcus walked through the observation decks alone. He reflected on everything he had seen, the alliances forming, the subtle power plays, and the expectations of the galaxy's elite. Humans were rarely part of these games, yet he had been placed directly in the middle of them. The realization was sobering but invigorating. For the first time, he felt that humanity could be seen as a force to be respected, not ignored. The following day, a council meeting tested them further. Several alien species were present, each attempting to assert influence over Lady Thalira's decisions. One representative, a reptilian diplomat with sharp features and sharper words, openly mocked the choice of a human. "Surely, my lady," he said, "your ceremonial partner should be someone of stature, not a human who lacks experience in interstellar diplomacy." "Experience comes in many forms," he said. "Humans have survived extinction events, navigated hostile environments, and thrived without advanced alliances for millennia. Understanding, patience, and adaptability often outweigh raw power or status." Marcus realized he had made his point without confrontation. Humans were not invincible, but they were resilient, intelligent, and capable of seeing angles others overlooked. His words had shifted perception, even if only slightly, and he felt a quiet satisfaction in that. Lady Thalira glanced at him, her eyes betraying the smallest hint of approval. Marcus understood that he had passed another test. This was more than diplomacy. It was a demonstration of human potential in a galaxy that often underestimated them. Over the next week, Marcus continued to navigate the complexities of the station, observing alien interactions and maintaining a calm presence. He learned more about Liathar rituals, political structures, and strategies than most humans could ever imagine. Every meeting, every ceremony, and every casual conversation became a lesson. He documented everything meticulously, knowing that this knowledge could one day serve humanity in ways no one yet understood. Despite the challenges, Marcus found moments of quiet reflection. He often returned to the observation decks at night, staring at the stars and contemplating humanity's place in the galaxy. Humans had always been underestimated, but perhaps that was an advantage. While others relied on fear, status, or intimidation, humans relied on resilience, creativity, and understanding. Marcus realized that this unique perspective could become a powerful tool, especially when wielded carefully in a universe where underestimation often led to mistakes. By the end of the week, Marcus had earned subtle recognition from some alien dignitaries. Though many still questioned his presence, others began to observe him differently. They saw a human who was composed, intelligent, and capable of navigating challenges that might have overwhelmed others. Marcus felt a quiet sense of pride. Lady Thalira had chosen wisely, and in doing so, she had created an opportunity not only for herself, but for humanity as a whole. As he prepared for another evening with Lady Thalira, Marcus realized that the real test was only beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of intrigue, and filled with dangers humans had never encountered before. But tonight, and in the days ahead, he would continue to observe, learn, and adapt. He had stepped into a world where humans were underestimated, and that, he realized, could be humanity's greatest advantage. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility and the thrill of opportunity. For the first time, Marcus understood that humans had a place in this galaxy not because of power or dominance, but because of their ability to endure, adapt, and think in ways others could not. And in that moment, he knew that the story of humanity was just beginning to unfold in ways no one, not even the most powerful alien nobles, could fully predict. The days after the ceremony passed like a carefully measured rhythm, but Marcus Hale could feel the tension in the air growing with every passing hour. Lady Thalira's rivals had not forgotten the audacity of choosing a human for her ceremonial partner, and subtle attempts to undermine them were becoming more frequent. Some were open, testing boundaries in council meetings, while others hid their schemes in private whispers and coded messages. Marcus realized that he had stepped into a political battlefield far more dangerous than he had imagined, one where missteps could lead not only to humiliation, but also to deadly consequences. Lady Thalira, however, remained unshaken. She carried herself with the same calm, deliberate grace that Marcus had observed during the ceremony. Yet he could see, in fleeting moments, the sharp calculation in her eyes. She trusted him to act appropriately, to respond with tact, and to endure scrutiny, but Marcus understood that her trust came with weight. In this environment, every word, every gesture, and even a moment of hesitation could be weaponized against them. One morning, Lady Thalira summoned him to her study, a room filled with holographic maps, political charts, and archives that detailed the relationships and conflicts of dozens of star systems. She gestured for him to sit, and Marcus obeyed. "Captain Hale," she began, "you have observed much, but there are truths you have yet to see. The galaxy operates not only through power and wealth, but also through secrets, alliances, betrayals, and strategies that no human has witnessed unfold daily. You must understand these dynamics if you are to survive your role. I want to be prepared. Their plans are hidden behind layers of diplomacy, but the truth is there if you know how to look." He realized that much of alien strategy relied on observation, patience, and the ability to predict human, or alien, behavior. Humans had a unique advantage in this regard, he thought, the ability to notice subtle details and anticipate actions in ways that even the most intelligent aliens might overlook. As the days turned into nights, Marcus began to engage in deeper observation. He attended council meetings, social gatherings, and private negotiations, all while maintaining the composure that Lady Thalira had instructed. He noticed how subtle gestures, a glance, a pause, a slight change in tone, could carry immense meaning. He began to predict the actions of some diplomats before they acted, understanding their motives and vulnerabilities. One evening, as the station's artificial sun dipped below the horizon, a coded message arrived at Lady Thalira's chambers. It was a warning. A rival faction planned to challenge her during an upcoming council session, hoping to discredit her in front of the assembly. Marcus was immediately alerted to the urgency of the situation. Lady Thalira gestured for him to approach the holographic display. "They intend to present evidence that questions my decision to choose a human partner," she said, her voice calm but firm. "They hope to turn my choice into a weakness." "We can counter them," he said slowly, "by anticipating their arguments and showing that their assumptions about humans are wrong. We can highlight patience, endurance, and subtle intelligence, qualities humans have in abundance. Your words will carry weight precisely, because no one expects a human to intervene in our politics." As the session began, several rivals attempted to present their case, speaking in measured tones designed to embarrass Lady Thalira and, by extension, him. Their arguments relied on assumptions of human weakness, pointing to supposed inexperience and fragility. When it was his turn to speak, Marcus took a deep breath. He chose his words carefully, speaking slowly and clearly. "Humans have survived when others believed we would fail," he began. "We have endured environmental catastrophes, wars, and societal collapse. We adapt, we observe, and we think beyond immediate threats. Our strength is not always visible, but it is real. Underestimating humans is a mistake that history has shown can be fatal." Some of the alien delegates leaned forward, surprised by the clarity and confidence of his statement. Marcus continued, carefully weaving examples of human resilience, patience, and adaptability into his speech. He did not boast, but he spoke with authority, demonstrating that humans possessed qualities that others often overlooked. By the end of his speech, the assembly was visibly affected. Some delegates murmured among themselves, reconsidering their assumptions. Even the most vocal rivals looked uncertain, their attempts to humiliate Lady Thalira weakened by the quiet force of Marcus's words. Lady Thalira's gaze met his briefly, and he saw a flicker of approval, a silent acknowledgement that he had passed another test. After the session, Marcus and Lady Thalira retreated to her private chambers. She regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. "You exceeded my expectations," she said. "Few humans could have spoken with such precision and understanding. You have shown that humans are not to be underestimated. Observing and understanding are part of who we are." He observed betrayals disguised as diplomacy, alliances formed in secret, and strategies layered beneath layers of social custom. Every interaction was a lesson in patience, perception, and subtle influence. He began to see patterns, predicting the movements of certain factions and understanding the motivations behind seemingly random actions. One afternoon, Lady Thalira called him to the observation hall again. This time, she showed him a private communication between two rival factions planning a covert operation to undermine her. Marcus studied the details carefully, analyzing the timing, the locations, and the possible outcomes. He realized that their plan relied on assumptions about humans, assumptions that he could exploit. "Captain," Lady Thalira said, "this is an opportunity. We can turn their own strategy against them, but we must act with precision. Your insight into their expectations as humans will be valuable." He suggested subtle interventions, timed observations, careful disclosures, and minor public statements that would reveal flaws in the rivals' strategy without directly confronting them. Lady Thalira approved his approach, and together they executed it flawlessly. The results were immediate. The rival factions appeared disorganized, their credibility weakened, and whispers of doubt spread throughout the council. Delegates who had once mocked Marcus now regarded him with cautious respect. The galaxy was beginning to see humans not as weak or insignificant, but as observers and strategists capable of subtle influence. Despite the success, Marcus remained humble. He knew that the galaxy was vast, and the challenges far from over. Each victory, no matter how small, was a step in a much larger journey. He continued to document his observations, studying the nuances of alien behavior and learning how humans could navigate a universe that often underestimated them. One night, as he walked through the quiet corridors of the station, Marcus reflected on the journey so far. He had survived the ceremony, observed the politics, and influenced events in ways that no one expected. Yet he understood that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was full of unseen dangers, hidden motives, and challenges that humans had never faced. But Marcus felt a quiet confidence. Humans had always survived against the odds, and their strength lay not in power or intimidation, but in endurance, observation, and adaptability. Lady Thalira had chosen him not only as a ceremonial partner, but as a representative of humanity's unique qualities. And in doing so, she had created an opportunity that could change the perception of humans across the galaxy. As he returned to his quarters, Marcus felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The path ahead would be difficult, filled with intrigue, tests, and dangers, but he was prepared. Humans had a place in this galaxy, and he was determined to ensure that their presence was recognized, respected, and feared in ways that went beyond brute force. The night passed quietly, but Marcus knew that the next day would bring new challenges. Rivals would continue to test Lady Thalira, and by extension him. But he also knew that humans had an advantage no one else could match: the ability to endure, to observe, and to act with insight that others could not anticipate. As he lay in his quarters, Marcus reflected on how far he had come. From a human diplomat underestimated by almost everyone, he had become a presence in the galaxy that could not be ignored. The journey was far from over, but he felt ready for what lay ahead. And in that moment, he understood something profound. Sometimes, being underestimated was the greatest weapon of all. For Marcus Hale, and for humanity, the game had only just begun. The day began quietly, but Marcus Hale could feel tension pressing through the corridors of the space station. Lady Thalira had received word that rival factions were planning an audacious move, a public challenge meant to question her leadership, and by extension, humiliate her choice of a human partner. Marcus knew this was the moment where subtle observation would not be enough. Tonight, humanity's resilience and insight would need to be demonstrated in front of the galaxy. Lady Thalira summoned him to her private chambers early in the morning. The room was bathed in soft light from the artificial sun, highlighting the holographic maps and strategic data streams floating above her desk. She regarded Marcus with an intensity that made him sit straighter. "Captain Hale," she said, "today you will witness and participate in something few humans have ever experienced. Our rivals intend to expose what they perceive as weakness. You must be prepared to act." This was not merely a test of courage or diplomacy. It was an opportunity to show that humans could endure, adapt, and influence events in ways others could not even imagine. The station's grand hall was filled hours later with representatives from dozens of star systems. Marcus followed Lady Thalira into the center, standing beside her as they faced the council. The room was filled with alien beings of all shapes and sizes, each observing them with curiosity, skepticism, or outright contempt. Some muttered insults disguised as casual remarks, others whispered predictions about the humans' inevitable failure. The rivals began their attack subtly. They presented falsified reports, carefully constructed rumors, and insinuations designed to question Lady Thalira's decision to choose a human as her ceremonial partner. "Surely, my lady," one voice said, dripping with condescension, "your choice was made without understanding the consequences." Humans lack the experience and strategic depth needed to navigate galactic politics. When the chamber fell silent, he stepped forward slightly. His voice was clear, measured, and confident. "Humans have survived challenges that would have destroyed other species," he said. "We endure environmental catastrophes, social collapse, and isolation from advanced civilizations. Our strength lies not in intimidation, but in adaptability, patience, and understanding. Those qualities allow us to see angles others cannot, and to act in ways that preserve both ourselves and those around us." He spoke of surviving plagues, wars, and near-extinction events, demonstrating that humans could navigate crises far greater than anything the aliens had faced. His speech was not boastful. It was factual, measured, and impossible to dismiss without revealing their own lack of understanding. Lady Thalira observed him silently, her eyes revealing a flicker of pride. Marcus could feel her approval even without words. She had chosen him not for brute strength, charm, or tradition, but for qualities that aliens often overlooked: patience, insight, and endurance. Tonight, those qualities would prove decisive. The rivals attempted to interrupt, their voices rising in objection, but Marcus did not react with anger. He remained calm, using logic and observation to counter their claims. "Underestimating humans is a mistake," he said. "We adapt, we observe, we endure, and when required, we influence outcomes in ways others cannot anticipate." Their strategies had relied on assumptions, and those assumptions were now exposed as flawed. One particularly vocal rival, a tall, angular alien with piercing eyes, attempted one last challenge. "Your words are impressive, human, but can you act under pressure when lives and reputations are at stake?" Humans have a long history of acting under pressure. We do not rely solely on strength or status. We rely on knowledge, patience, and the ability to see consequences that others miss. Underestimation can be dangerous for anyone who relies on it. Instead, he found a presence that was measured, intelligent, and unshakable. A subtle ripple of acknowledgement spread through the council. For the first time, humans were no longer seen as insignificant. They were seen as capable, resilient, and worthy of cautious respect. As the debate continued, Marcus observed the subtle signs of shifting alliances. Delegates who had once supported the rivals now whispered privately, reconsidering their positions. The rivals themselves grew frustrated, realizing that their carefully constructed narrative was crumbling. Marcus and Lady Thalira had turned what was intended to be humiliation into a demonstration of intelligence and strategic insight. Later in Lady Thalira's private chamber, the noblewoman allowed herself a rare smile. "You have exceeded my expectations, Captain," she said. "Few humans could have navigated that session so effectively. You have shown qualities that even my closest allies did not fully recognize. Tonight, you have influenced not only perception but also outcomes." He had done more than survive scrutiny. He had demonstrated that humans could act decisively, thoughtfully, and with insight in the most challenging circumstances. For the first time, he felt that humanity's presence in the galaxy was being acknowledged in a meaningful way. The following days brought new challenges. Rivals attempted subtler tactics, coded messages meant to confuse, rumors intended to sow doubt, and alliances designed to isolate Lady Thalira. Marcus met each challenge with careful observation, logical analysis, and quiet interventions that guided outcomes without overt confrontation. He began to understand a crucial principle of alien politics. Those who underestimated humans often revealed their own weaknesses. Where others relied on status, intimidation, or fear, humans relied on observation, patience, and insight. Marcus realized that these qualities allowed him to act as both participant and strategist, shaping events without drawing direct attention to his influence. One night, a critical situation arose. A message arrived warning of an attempt to destabilize Lady Thalira's position during a regional council vote. The conspirators planned to manipulate data streams and communications, creating confusion and mistrust. Marcus studied the message carefully, tracing the signals and identifying the weaknesses in their plan. He proposed a counter-strategy, subtle interventions that would expose the conspirators' errors without direct confrontation. Lady Thalira approved, and together they executed the plan. The conspirators' plot failed, and their credibility suffered. Delegates who had once mocked Marcus now observed him with respect, recognizing that humans possessed qualities that could not be ignored. In private, Lady Thalira praised him. "You are more than a ceremonial partner, Marcus. You are an asset. You have shown that humans can think beyond immediate threats, anticipate consequences, and influence outcomes in ways that others cannot. That is a rare and valuable quality." He knew that the galaxy was vast, and the challenges ahead would be even greater. Yet he also understood that this was humanity's moment, to demonstrate that resilience, intelligence, and adaptability were strengths that could shift perception and power in ways no one expected. Over the next week, Marcus continued to navigate the intricate web of alien politics. He observed betrayals disguised as diplomacy, alliances that shifted like sand, and strategies layered with subtlety and precision. Each encounter reinforced the lesson that humans, underestimated though they were, could endure and adapt in ways that others could not predict. By the time a critical regional council meeting arrived, Marcus felt prepared. Lady Thalira's rivals had grown cautious, aware that their previous attempts to undermine her had failed. Marcus, standing beside her, observed the council with calm confidence. When challenged, he spoke with clarity, insight, and authority, highlighting patterns, predicting outcomes, and demonstrating the subtle strength of human reasoning. The session concluded with Lady Thalira's position strengthened and the rivals' credibility diminished. Delegates whispered about the human who had turned challenges into victories, and Marcus realized that perceptions of his species were changing. Humans were no longer merely weak observers. They were strategic, resilient, and capable of influencing events on a galactic scale. That evening, as Marcus walked through the quiet corridors of the station, he reflected on the journey so far. He had survived scrutiny, observed complex politics, and influenced outcomes in ways that no human before him had attempted. Lady Thalira had chosen wisely, and in doing so, she had created an opportunity not only for herself but for humanity. He understood that the galaxy was vast, filled with unseen dangers and challenges beyond imagination. Yet he felt a quiet confidence. Humans had always survived against the odds, relying not on brute strength, but on observation, patience, and adaptability. These qualities, he realized, were more powerful than many species recognized. As he returned to his quarters, Marcus reflected on the events of the past week. He had not only defended Lady Thalira's position, but also shown that humans were a force that could not be underestimated. He understood that this was the essence of the HFY, humanity's resilience, ingenuity, and quiet strength earning respect, sometimes fear, in a galaxy that had long dismissed them. For Marcus Hale, the climax of his journey so far was clear. Humanity had proven that it could endure, adapt, and influence outcomes in ways that others could not anticipate. And as the stars glimmered beyond the station's observation windows, he realized that this was only the beginning. The galaxy had seen a glimpse of what humans could do, and the impact of that revelation would resonate far beyond the walls of the station. Tonight, Marcus would rest, but tomorrow, the universe would continue its challenges. And he knew that humanity was ready to meet them, not with arrogance, but with the quiet confidence of a species that had endured the impossible and emerged stronger. The night passed in calm reflection, but Marcus's mind remained active, reviewing strategies, analyzing alliances, and anticipating the next moves of rival factions. He understood that his journey was far from over, but he also knew that humans had carved a space for themselves in the galaxy through patience, insight, and resilience. And in that moment, Marcus realized something profound. Being underestimated was humanity's greatest advantage. The galaxy had seen the power of endurance, the wisdom of observation, and the strength of subtle influence. Humans had proven that they could rise above expectations, not through force, but through intelligence, patience, and the courage to act when it mattered most. For Lady Thalira, for Marcus, and for humanity, the future had become brighter, more promising, and infinitely more dangerous. But with careful observation, steady resolve, and unwavering endurance, they would meet whatever challenges lay ahead, and leave a mark on the galaxy that no one could ignore. The station was quiet in the early hours, but Marcus Hale felt the weight of the galaxy pressing around him. Weeks had passed since the ceremony that had placed him in Lady Thalira's inner circle, and the ripples of their actions were spreading faster than he had anticipated. Rivals who had once mocked him now tread carefully, aware that humans were not as weak or insignificant as they had believed. Marcus walked through the observation decks, looking out at the endless stars, reflecting on how much had changed in so little time. Humanity's presence in the galaxy was no longer invisible. Lady Thalira summoned him to her private chambers again, and this time Marcus could see a quiet triumph in her eyes. The noblewoman's rivals had attempted several more subtle maneuvers, but each had failed, undone by careful observation, anticipation, and precise action. She gestured for Marcus to sit, and he obeyed. "You have done more than survive challenges, Marcus," she said. "You have influenced perceptions, changed expectations, and shown that humans are not to be underestimated. The galaxy is beginning to see that your species possesses qualities that cannot be ignored. Sometimes that is enough to shift outcomes." Marcus observed it all, taking careful notes and continuing to learn. He understood that while some aliens might never fully respect humanity, their perception had shifted enough to provide a lasting advantage. A critical council session was scheduled, one that would determine the control of a contested planetary system. Lady Thalira's rivals planned to use this opportunity to challenge her authority and, by extension, discredit Marcus's presence. Marcus prepared himself carefully, analyzing every known faction, every potential angle, and every possible outcome. He reviewed the alliances, the past actions, and the subtle patterns of behavior he had been observing for weeks. Humans were often underestimated, but he intended to turn that underestimation into a strength. The hall was packed. Alien delegates from dozens of systems filled the seats, their expressions a mixture of curiosity, expectation, and skepticism. Marcus stood beside Lady Thalira, maintaining a calm and steady presence. The rivals began their attack immediately, presenting data, reports, and carefully crafted arguments intended to undermine her authority. Their words dripped with condescension, assuming that a human partner could never provide meaningful insight. Marcus observed the proceedings, noting the subtle signs of hesitation, the flickers of doubt in the rivals' faces, and the murmurs of agreement or disagreement among the delegates. When the opportunity arose, he spoke with careful precision. "Leaders of this assembly," he began, his voice clear and measured, "humans have faced challenges that many species would consider insurmountable. We have survived environmental disasters, social collapse, and centuries of isolation from advanced civilizations. Our strength lies not in immediate power, but in our endurance, our adaptability, and our ability to anticipate consequences. These qualities allow us to navigate complex situations with clarity and insight that others may miss." The delegates were unprepared for a human to speak with such authority, such clarity, and such calm confidence. Marcus continued, weaving examples of human resilience into his speech without boasting, demonstrating that humans could endure and influence events in ways that others had not expected. Lady Thalira observed him quietly, her eyes reflecting a mixture of pride and satisfaction. She had chosen him not for power, but for qualities that were invisible yet potent: patience, observation, and understanding. Tonight, those qualities would have lasting consequences. The rivals attempted to interrupt, but Marcus remained composed. Each word, each pause was calculated to expose assumptions and highlight the subtle strengths of humanity. The alien delegates began to murmur among themselves, reconsidering their positions and the credibility of those who had sought to undermine Lady Thalira. By the time the session concluded, the result was clear. Lady Thalira's authority had been reinforced, and the rivals' influence diminished. Delegates left the hall quietly, their previous certainty shaken. Humans, once considered inconsequential, were now seen as strategic and perceptive. Marcus felt a quiet sense of triumph. His presence, his patience, and his insight had shifted perceptions in a way that could not easily be undone. Over the following days, Marcus and Lady Thalira worked to solidify these changes. They engaged in diplomacy, resolved disputes, and subtly guided discussions to strengthen alliances. Marcus's observations became increasingly valuable. He noticed patterns that others missed, predicted outcomes with surprising accuracy, and helped Lady Thalira navigate political currents that were treacherous even to seasoned alien leaders. Through it all, Marcus remained humble. He understood that humans were not invincible. They relied on endurance, intelligence, and observation, not brute force or intimidation. Yet in a galaxy that had consistently underestimated them, these qualities were formidable. Humans could act as strategists, mediators, and influencers in ways that no one anticipated. One evening, Lady Thalira took him aside. The station was quiet, and the artificial sun cast long shadows across the floor. "You have done something remarkable, Marcus," she said softly. "You have changed perceptions of your species in ways that may last for generations. Many humans might have failed, but you have endured, observed, and acted with insight. That is a rare achievement." Some of Lady Thalira's rivals continued to dismiss humans, but many began to reconsider. The species that had once been ignored, mocked, or underestimated was now recognized as capable of strategic thought, patient endurance, and subtle influence. The ripple effects of Marcus's presence and actions were already altering alliances and expectations in ways that would take years to fully understand. Marcus spent the next weeks reviewing everything he had learned. He compiled observations, strategies, and insights into a record that could one day guide humanity in its interactions with the wider galaxy. He had experienced politics, intrigue, and danger in a way that no human had before. And through it all, he had maintained composure, patience, and insight, demonstrating that humanity's greatest strengths were often invisible but no less potent. One night, standing on the observation deck and looking out at the endless stars, Marcus reflected on the journey. From the moment he had accepted Lady Thalira's audacious request, his life had changed irrevocably. He had faced scrutiny, danger, and doubt, and emerged not only unbroken but respected. Humans, long dismissed as weak and inconsequential, were now recognized as capable of endurance, observation, and influence that could shift the balance of power. He realized that the greatest power humans possessed was often unseen. Strength, influence, and respect were not always demonstrated through force or status. They could be achieved through patience, insight, and the courage to act when others failed to anticipate consequences. In a galaxy that had long underestimated humanity, this was a profound advantage. Lady Thalira joined him quietly on the deck, her presence steady and calm. "The galaxy will remember tonight," she said softly, "and it will remember the human who stood beside me." "It already has." For Marcus, the true victory was not in personal recognition, but in the shift of perception. Humanity, long underestimated and overlooked, had carved a place in the galaxy. Their endurance, insight, and adaptability were no longer invisible. They were acknowledged, respected, and quietly feared in ways that mattered. And yet, Marcus knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, filled with unseen challenges and threats. But humans had proven that they could endure, adapt, and influence outcomes in ways that others could not anticipate. This understanding gave them an advantage that few could match, a power that was subtle, enduring, and impossible to ignore. As he looked out at the stars, Marcus felt a profound sense of purpose. Humans had survived not through brute strength, but through resilience, observation, and intelligence. They had turned underestimation into an advantage and had shown the galaxy that even a single human could make a difference. For Lady Thalira, for Marcus, and for humanity, the future was uncertain, dangerous, and full of possibility. But they faced it with quiet confidence, knowing that patience, insight, and endurance were forces stronger than many realized. The galaxy had seen the potential of humans, and it would never forget. Marcus turned back to Lady Thalira, feeling the weight of responsibility and the thrill of opportunity. "The galaxy will continue to test us," he said. "But humans are ready." The night stretched on, calm and quiet, but Marcus's mind remained active, anticipating challenges, analyzing possibilities, and preparing for the future. He understood that humans were no longer invisible, no longer underestimated, and no longer irrelevant. They had survived scrutiny, influenced outcomes, and earned recognition in a galaxy that had once dismissed them. For Marcus Hale and for humanity, this was the ultimate triumph, being seen, respected, and acknowledged for qualities that others had overlooked for centuries. The galaxy had changed, perceptions had shifted, and humanity's place among the stars was secure, not because of brute force, but because of endurance, insight, and quiet, unyielding strength. As he stood on the observation deck, Marcus knew one truth above all. Underestimated humans were the most dangerous force in the galaxy, and their story was only beginning.